All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, after a non flashy offseason for the New York Mets, it was somewhat tough to get a feel for what this team could be. Under first year manager Carlos Mendoza, New York dropped its first 5 games to begin this season. But since then, it has been a different team in Queens. The Metropolitans have won 12 of their last 15, which includes their current 6 game win streak. After dropping their first 2 series of the year, New York has won their last 5 series, which includes their current series against the Los Angeles Dodgers as they've taken the first two of this weekend series at Chavez Ravine. Now, the MLB season is clearly a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're talking about 162 games here. But of course, there were some that wanted to go out there and write the Mets off after they began this season with a record of 0-5. Now, after the slow start, the bat of Francisco Lindor is beginning to wake up. He's gotten hits in 4 out of his last 5 games, which included a big time home run last night as the New York Mets took game 1 from the Dodgers. The additions of veterans such as Joey Wendell and Harrison Bader to this lineup have shown big so far for the Mets. Giving a youngster like Brett Beatty more run at third base has been solid as well for the Mets. And I think, the way that we've seen Beatty play so far this season, this is why at some point your youngsters they're not going to get any better in the minors. You got to bring them to the bigs and let see and you got to see what they can and cannot do. And it's one of those where even when you call the guy up, he's not going to get any better sitting on the bench. You got to go out there, it's sink or swim. And Beatty, this guy, he's a highly touted prospect for the Mets, and he's starting to show some good things. You look at a guy like Francisco Alvarez, of course. The Mets are very high on this young man at catcher. Had a solid season last year for the Mets. He's got the thumb injury right now. That's a big loss for the Mets, but you know what? You got to try to roll with the punches. Again, like I said, the season is a marathon, and it's not a sprint. Pete Alonso, I talked about Pete Alonso, in my opinion, being going to have a big season coming into this year due to the fact that this is his walk year, already 6 home runs. And I think Big Pete is going to, do some big things this year in the middle of that lineup for the Mets. A guy like Starling Marte has bounced back, an injury riddled 2023 for the Mets, which really began at the end of 2022. And if the Mets can get him healthy, that is going to be big. And then, of course, New York is still hopeful to get JD Martinez going. Of course, he was a late signing in spring training. He's going to be a guy that's going to provide some protection, if you will, in that lineup for the bat of Pete Alonso. You look at this pitching staff, it was a spit and glue rotation to begin the year. Of course, no Kodai Senga as he's on the injured list right now. But then guys like Sean Manaea and Luis Severino have been solid so far. The Mets have been getting solid contributions this year so far from their bullpen. And all-star closer Edwin Diaz, after missing the entire 2023 season after that freak accident at the World Baseball Classic, is starting to look like the Edwin Diaz of old. And I think we got a glimpse of that today. Of course, he was brought in during the 8th inning to get the Mets out of a jam. He walked a tightrope, okay? He walked 2 batters. He walked Shohei Ohtani. He walked Freddie Freeman. But coming back and getting the next 2 batters was huge. And that's why, you pay big money to a closer like that. Granted, you brought him in the 8th, but nonetheless, this is why you pay big money to a guy like that to go out there and get out of jams like that. And that is exactly what he did today. That's what he has done for the bulk of his Mets career, and he's continuing to do that. Like I said before, there's still plenty of baseball ahead of us. We're still in April, okay? But credit to the Mets for not giving up on themselves and picking themselves up off of the canvas because at 0-5, um, I think it would have been easy for this team to go into a tailspin, but no, that has not been the case. They've shown some reserve, and they found something out about themselves. And I think the biggest thing for the Mets, in my opinion, number one, of course, getting that first victory of the season, in that doubleheader where they split with the Detroit Tigers. But then getting away from home because losing 5 out of 6 to begin the year, and of course, all of those games coming at City Field and Flushing, the New York media can be tough at times, regardless if the expectations are high or low for you as a team. And I think them getting, out of New York for a bit, going to Cincinnati, going to Atlanta, taking 2 out of 3 from the Braves was big for them. Okay. Then coming back for Kansas City, and then, of course, sweeping the Pirates and now sweeping pardon me, not sweeping the Dodgers, but taking the first two of this series from LA. And of course they still got some more of this quick West Coast swing as they make the trek up I-5 to San Francisco, just taking a step off of it for a minute and having a little bit of a revisionist history here. I miss the old days when the East Coast teams would basically go either up the coast or down the coast a couple of times a year, and the same thing for the West Coast teams when they would travel east. I've said my piece as far as everybody playing everybody. I think it should be more concentrated on your respective leagues that you're focusing on and you're battling for playoff positioning. But nonetheless, the Mets have an opportunity here to put some wins together. And that's going to be important because, like I said before, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. But what we have learned in the last couple of years with this expanded postseason is you don't need to be a world beater during the regular season. Just get into the postseason. 85, maybe 86 wins could do it. Get you into the postseason. You can make a run, and you never know what happens next. But at the end of the day, this is the first year, of course, for Carlos Mendoza, but it's also the first year for the Mets with David Stearns as their president of baseball ops as he came over from the Milwaukee Brewers. And I think it's important for front office to be on the same page with the skipper. And this is no disrespect to Buck Showalter, the Mets manager for the last couple of years. I think Buck Showalter, in my mind, is a tremendous baseball mind. I think when it's all said and done, I think Buck is a Hall of Famer. But at the end of the day, you just need everybody to be on the same page. And I'm not going to sit up here and blame Buck Showalter for the Mets issues last year. There was a lot of them, okay? But I'm just saying that it's very important for a manager and front office to be on the same page. And it looks like that is the case right now with Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns. I talked about this coming into the year. I felt like this was going to be an up and down season for the Mets, and I still believe that, but they do have life. This season to me reminds me of the 2005 Mets. And the reason why I say that, that was the first year for Willie Randolph as a Mets manager, another former Yankee coach that came over. And, the Mets got off to a slow start that year before they turned it around. They were up and down. They were in contention for a postseason spot until they fell out late. So we saw the Mets get off to a slow start this year. They've gotten it going. I still think there's going to be some ups and downs. Those are all about the ebbs and flows of a major league baseball season. But nonetheless, if you're the Mets, you've got to be feeling good about yourself. You've got to be feeling good about where you are compared to where you were a couple of weeks ago. And at the end of the day, just win series. And that's what the Mets have been doing. They've beaten some good teams along the way. You think about the Braves, always a perennial, World Series contender. The same thing can be said about the Dodgers. The Royals have gotten off to a good start. The Mets took 2 out of 3 from them, and the Pirates got off to a good start, and the Mets just swept them as well. So if you're the Mets, you got to be feeling good about yourselves. You've won your last 6, 12 out of your last 15, and let's just see if the Metropolitans can keep this streak going. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.